Hi everyone, thanks Clint. I'm Lee Rix, Managing Director of Eco Approach. And although we're discussing how to help your landlords navigate major compliance changes, I think we need to address a major compliance change from 5 years ago that will absolutely be pushing its way onto centre stage again very, very soon. And by that, I'm referring to the electrical safety standards in the private rental sector. If you want to go next slide for us, please, Luke. So for what feels like an absolute eternity, it's been the responsibility of a landlord to ensure that the property they let is safe for the occupants. And that's typified by gas safety certificates. Gas appliances were considered an item of risk, liable to defect, and therefore must be checked every 12 months. A reasonable suggestion and something that was ratified by law back in 1998. Not quite sure how, but it took us 22 years to come to the same conclusion around electrical safety. By introducing a legal requirement back in 2020, we took a massive step in the right direction. And just as a quick recap of what those regulations actually state, so a landlord must have a valid EICR for a property, the report must be made available to the tenant, and the report must be renewed as per the renewal date on that certificate. There's a maximum validity period of 5 years, and that's down to the discretion of the electrician conducting that testing. If the EICR returns an unsatisfactory result, the remedial work that's been identified must be resolved within 28 days of the inspection, and non-compliance can result in some pretty hefty fines of up to £30,000. Next slide, please. So what did we learn 5 years ago? Some simple answers. One, there's quite a few rental properties in the UK. Two, landlords as a collective like to leave things to the last minute. And three, you need a hell of a lot of coffee to stay up all night processing certificates. So back in 2020, there was this phased introduction to the regulations. So the new regs applied to new tenancies from July 2020, and all existing tenancies had to have the cert in place by the 1st of April 2021. So if you do the math, it sounds like there was a 10-month window in which landlords could get their certificates in order. And that's for all 5.5 million rental properties in the UK at the time. But the reality was that an overwhelming majority did not act until about January 2021, which we created this just unsustainable demand in that first quarter. And as I mentioned, the certificates have a maximum validity period of 5 years. So I think we're just about to experience that exact same Q1 demand, but 5 years later. And to say that electricians did well in that period would be an understatement. We witnessed surge pricing across the supply chain because landlords just had no choice. And remember that burden isn't just to get the assessment done. This was the first introduction of mandatory electrical inspections. The rate of failure was high. It was as high as 30% due to age in electrical installations and probably just the fact that landlords didn't have to spend the money on it until that point. So these remedial works had to also be completed within 28 days as per the regs. So you can just imagine it just became unsustainable. And despite an enormous volume of landlords falling outside of compliance due to that demand, we didn't actually see that many reports of these significant fines that are associated with the regs. Seems like there was a bit of a pragmatic approach taken, so knowing that landlords were trying to get compliant, but the industry just couldn't support them. But if you fast forward 5 years, it really does feel like that sentiment has well and truly worn off. And we can now expect to see the fines being issued in cases of non-compliance. I mean, it's not a secret that the Chancellor needs a few quid, right? Another point to consider is the expected volume of EICRs that will be unsatisfactory. 5 years on from that last inspection, any C3 items, which were noted as advisories at the time, could absolutely have deteriorated to become C2s, which require action this time round. We've also seen amendments to electrical standards in the last 5 years. There was a big change back in 2022 that could also put landlords at risk of further remedial works being required within a short time frame. Next slide, please. And whilst we hope the volume of unsatisfactory EICRs will be lower than 5 years ago due to a greater awareness of electrical safety throughout the private rental sector, we've got to consider the additional burden that's grown and been placed on the electrical industry over the last 5 years anyway. So we spoke earlier that the UK is on a mission to decarbonise its housing stock, in which electrification of heat is playing an enormous role. Many of the measures require an electrician: solar panels and battery installations, wiring up air source heat pumps, or as Luke mentioned, the electrician required to do the ventilation measures that go in with the insulation. Yet, according to a recent JTL report, there's actually been a 26% reduction in qualified electricians in the UK in that last 5-year period. So net zero targets and MEES legislation are providing even greater demand for electrician, which coupled with this significant spike that's coming for EICRs, we're just going to create that same environment as 5 years ago, but arguably with fewer electricians. It's going to be chaotic. Next slide, please. So what can agents and lenders do? And I think at this point it's take the horse to the water. At this stage, it's critical for agents, lenders, property managers to be communicating with their landlords to ensure that action is taken promptly. Review your property management and data tools. Understand which landlords have renewals coming up within the next 6 months and encourage them to take early action. Remember, these aren't like annual gas safety certificates. An EICR can last for up to 5 years. So bringing that renewal period forward slightly is hardly bad financial planning. Another key point is that you can lower the barriers to action. Provide your landlords with a network of trusted and vetted partners like Eco Approach who can deliver high quality reports and at reasonable prices, and use your economies of scale to lean on your partners, secure great pricing and lock it in. So when that inevitable jump in demand and that surge pricing kicks in, your landlords won't be a victim of that. And then just a final point to round off is, yes, the legal responsibility of this is on the landlord, but the relationship that you have with your landlords is your responsibility. Communicate early, guide them well, and avoid this potential headache.